Welcome back. It is difficult to control all the variables that might influence the response to a treatment. One way to control some of the variables is through blocking. What does this mean? A block is a group of individuals sharing some common features that might affect the treatment. In a randomized block experiment, individuals are first sorted into blocks and then a random process is used to assign each individual in the block to one of the treatments. Say, for example, you are conducting study of a medicine or to address heart condition. Well, a person could have heart condition if they have diabetes or if they do not have diabetes. Now, your medication may work differently in the diabetes and the non-diabetes cases. So, what would you do? Look at your patients. You'll divide them into diabetes and non-diabetes blocks. Within each block, you'll randomly choose people for your treatment or for the placebo within each block. You see? So, this is an example of randomized block experiment. Okay, so that is important because you want to make sure your medicine has like other influence, like the diabetes, it might influence a response to your treatment a certain other way. So, in summary, you always have a control group. What is a control group? Is the group which receives dummy treatment. Dummy treatment is actually no treatment, but the patient believes he or she is receiving some treatment, enabling the researchers to control for the placebo effect. Placebo effect is when a patient is not receiving any treatment yet feels better because they believe they are receiving a treatment. In general, a control group is used to account for the influence of other known or unknown variables that might be an underlying cause of a change in response in the experimental group. Such variables are called lurking or confounding variables. Lurking or confounding variables are variables which you do not think of when you start your experiment. You'll think of it typically later. For example, if the air conditioning is good or if there is enough sunlight or not, this might affect how the medication influences the patient. So these are whether you have a very good nurse or not. So there are these other variables which might actually be more effective than your medicine. So you might want to be able to catch hold of such possibilities, right? You don't want to be administering medicines, unnecessary medicines, when there are other factors which might actually be more effective. Now, so those other factors are called lurking or confounding variables. Randomization is used to assign individuals to the two treatment groups. This helps prevent bias in selecting members for each group. Randomization is very important. If you are a doctor and somebody tells you, please experiment on this medicine, right? Experiment using this medicine. You might not want to use it, right? On a patient you like or whatever. And so you need to be doing this without bias, basically. Okay. So randomization helps prevent bias. Replication of the experiment on many patients reduces the possibility that the differences in pain relief for the two groups occurred by chance alone. What are they talking about? See, sometimes a medicine works on the first 10 people you tested, but did not work well in the next 10. Well, if you have a good medicine, it must be it should be able to work no matter which random 10 patients you get, right? With the same conditions and so on. So if you bring in a medicine, it should be subjected to evaluation by other researchers. And other researchers will replicate your experiment under similar conditions and see whether you have honestly evaluated the outcome of your medicines. All right. So replication is very important. Surveys. Once you decide whether you are going to use sampling, census, observation, or experiments, a common means to gather data about people is to ask them questions. This process is the essence of surveying. Sometimes the possible responses are simply yes or no. You have taken many surveys yourself. For example, teaching evaluation is a survey almost every student participates in. Other times, the respondents choose a number on a scale that represents their feelings from, say, strongly disagree to strongly agree. So, you in a survey, you might also go through this scale. Such a scale is called Likert scale. In the case of an open-ended discussion type response, the researcher must determine a way to convert the response to a category or number. Sometimes a survey is a whole bunch of sentences. Oh, say in a few words, blah, 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 the conditions of your workplace. Well, say I am conducting this survey and you give me a long paragraph. From that long paragraph, I must be able to assign a number or a category. A number of issues can arise when using a survey. Well, surveys can usually can give rise to several issues. Some potential pitfalls of a survey. Non-response. Individuals either cannot be contacted or refuse to participate. Non-response can result in significant undercoverage of population. So a large number of people might just refuse to participate in a survey. Well, so you are undercovering the population. Truthfulness of response. Sometimes the respondents may lie intentionally or inadvertently. So either intentionally or without meaning to, the respondent may lie. These things happen. Faulty recall. Respondents may not accurately remember. Right? That can also happen. So sometimes we are participating in a survey and we don't really remember what it was. Hidden bias. The question may be worded in such a way as to elicit a specific response. For example, don't you think the food in that restaurant was terrible? Well, if I ask such a question, I have put the word terrible in your mind. So the question was worded in such a fashion to elicit a specific response. The order of questions might lead to biased responses. Order. So somebody chooses the worst dish in the menu and says, tell me, how does it feel? Now, after that, if it's a terrible dish, after that, any dish that comes along, you will probably have made up your mind. So the order of questions can lead to biased responses. Also, the number of responses on a Likert scale may force responses that do not. Say, if I say, choose one, right? Strongly disagree, mildly disagree, blah, blah, blah. I give you many, many choices. After a while, the respondent may not want to think so much, right? Just give an average to every answer. So there are hidden biases based on your questionnaire. Sometimes the questions have vague wording such as often, seldom, occasionally. Well, often will mean different things to different people. Seldom, likewise, will mean different things to different people, and so on. Interviewer influence. Factors such as tone of voice, body language, dress, gender, authority, and ethnicity of the interviewer might influence responses. This is human condition, right? We see a person, how they are dressed, how they look, their ethnicity, their accent, and we give either favorable response or not, right? voluntary response. Individuals with strong feelings about a subject are often more likely than others to respond. If you feel strongly about some candidate, you will give an opinion. If you don't, you will not. So the volunteer who is participating will also bring in their own uh, bias to the response. Okay, it won't be objective necessarily. Then there are sometimes our goal is to understand the cause and effect relationship between two or more variables. Now, suppose you are looking at two different variables, right? So you are worrying about the effect of medicine and then the effect of air conditioning, right? Now, nobody thought of effect of good water, right? That was a lurking variable or confounding variable. Nobody thought of that. We worried about medicine and air conditioning. That's it. Okay. So something that there is lurking around can complicate your study. A lurking variable is one for which no data have been collected, but that nevertheless has influence on other variables. Two variables are confounded when the effects of one cannot be distinguished from the effects of the other. So sometimes one variable, either your medicine or the air conditioning, you cannot distinguish which one is having an effect. Okay, so confounding variables may be part of the study or they may be outside lurking variables. Okay, so surveys have a huge swath of issues. So this is why when we do a statistical study, we have to be very careful and be open minded that we might have overlooked something important. So if somebody else comes in and says, hey, your study is not that good because, well, don't just hesitate them. Wait for what they have to say. Wait and listen. Yeah. Choosing data collection, we'll come to this in our next video.